So I'm going to do something a bit different today and jump on the whole tier list trend that's happening at the moment. The Song of Ice and Fire and Game of Thrones is the perfect thing for it, with so many different characters and stuff. I don't really do unscripted videos. I like to kind of script it, make sure I know what I'm going to say, because for me it's always been about the world and the history rather than my own opinion. So let's just see how this goes. I'm going to be doing a list on book characters who are point of view. Now Aaron. On the whole, the Ironborn storyline's okay, but I can be a bit indifferent when it comes to it. And out of all the Ironborn point of views, I think Aaron's the least interesting. So I'm thinking maybe D, as I don't hate him, but I just think there are better point of views in the area. So I may put him in D. Hota for me is a point of view where I'm not entirely sure why he exists. He doesn't have many chapters at all. He doesn't really, for me, do much, apart from the whole Marcella thing. But I just think Arianne Martell's side of it is more compelling and more interesting. Maybe he'll get more chapters in the future, but for me, he just hasn't really seen enough of him yet to really warrant him being anywhere near the top. Probably going to put him in F for now. I might change my mind. It's hard because I don't think there are really any characters that I really dislike enough to put into the F tier, but for the sake of the list, I've got to. Arya. Okay. Now, this one might be a bit controversial for some people, because I know people absolutely love Arya. I really enjoyed her story once it got to the Riverlands and in Harrenhal and travelling after that. I really enjoyed the Faceless Man stuff. I find her chapters very hit and miss, especially early on. Sometimes I kind of just gloss over. I really want to put her in an A, but it's one of these situations where I think it's like a really high B or a really low A. I think put her in a B for now. See, Aerys Oakheart is another where we don't really get enough of him for him to really make an impact on you. I like seeing things from the Kingsguard perspective, especially someone who's actively in the Kingsguard who's got a job. And I like seeing how he gets manipulated. I think maybe E, because I think he's slightly more interesting than in the whole grand scheme of things in Dorne. He's not really a major player for me. Asha or Yara in the show, I think what's important to remember here is I'm doing this based on them in the book, not the show. I might do a separate one for the show because they get to a point where they're so different in the show, they're almost a completely different character. But I remember the first time I read A Feast for Crows, I did start to get a bit bored of her chapters. And again, I think there are other Ironborn chapters which are just better. So C, I think. Barristan's another one. It's an odd one. His point of view comes in very late and seems very random. But I do enjoy seeing his take on the world. The only reason he even has a POV is for the Battle of Fire. Still haven't seen enough of him. Maybe put him in D. Bran's another solid B for me. I love the magical elements of his character, and the trip beyond the wall to meet Bloodraven, I think that's fantastic. Just for me, the early Bran chapters are just a bit slow. Not the initial ones, because it's the introduction to the story, but once he's fallen from the tower and he's just in bed and getting used to it, I don't know. When I first read the books, it didn't really do it for me, but I do think he's one of these characters that improve as the story goes on. Now, Brienne, as much as I love her as a character, for me, her point of view is going to be summed up by saying a lot of walking around. Yeah, I like to see the world. If it goes down like it does in the show, then I think her chapters in the future books will be a lot more compelling. I'm going to put her in C. Catelyn, I'm going to put her in C as well. I like seeing the War of Five Kings do arise, and her thoughts on people like Ned, and especially Jon. Just for me, I found annoying reading her because her choices seem, well, a bit stupid sometimes, just not thought out and frustrating. I understand why she does it, and it makes her very human, making these rash decisions like kidnapping Tyrion. She's a good POV. She's not bad. She's not fantastic. She's good. I just think there are some better than her. Cersei's another C. I really enjoy seeing her view on things as she tries to hold on to power. I think it's even more interesting because it comes after her arrest and you kind of begin to see her mental breakdown. But again, like with Barristan, for me, we've not seen enough of her to really warrant putting her any higher. Now, I've used the Trystane picture from the show just because it's easier. But Quentyn, it's another one where I think his story, if he's alive, has so much potential going forward. However, like Brienne, it's a lot of travelling. I do like the group dynamic with his friends and stuff, and I do like the risky plan to go get a dragon. But for me, I don't really think we saw enough of his character to really put him higher than a C. Tyrion. I've got a feeling this might be another controversial one for me because I love his character. I especially love him. After Joffrey's murder, he's on the run. You bring back Illyrio and he's travelling about. The whole introduction of Jon Connor, I think, is really interesting. I think he's got quite a compelling story with his disabilities and stuff. But for me, A or B, put him in A. Victorian. Okay. Another tricky one. I think, again, one of the better Ironborn characters. I really like he's got a lot of personal conflict, especially when Euron comes back. He's a good example of what it is to be Ironborn. I think because of that, I think he's better than Aeron. I'd say he's probably on par with Asher. So I'm going to go for a C. Mel. Same problem here with Aeron and Aerys here. Melisandre has the advantage of the fact she's already an established character and we've seen her a lot. However, she does just have one chapter. As insightful as that one chapter is, I don't feel I can put her any higher than Barristan or Aeron. I hope she gets more in Winds of Winter because I really do like her take. I like seeing her actual perspective of the visions. And in that one chapter that we got from her, it caused so much speculation about what happens with Jon. I really like her dynamic with Jon as well. Also, she's definitely one I'm looking forward to, but for right now, she has to be an E. Theon, it's got to be another A. It's such a compelling story. Seeing how his relationship with his father, how that drove him to betray his best friend Rob, murder potentially his own children, and do all these awful things. And then, in a way, he does get his comeuppance when it comes to Ramsay, where he becomes a reek. And seeing him being mentally broken and then pieces of him trying to break through, it's just a really compelling story, and I'm really looking forward to seeing where it goes in Winds of Winter. If the TV show's anything to go by, if it's anything like that, it's going to be fantastic. Sansa. I've got a feeling this is going to be another really hot take that people are probably going to disagree with quite strongly, because I know she's a very much loved character, especially when it comes to the TV show. But when I'm thinking in terms of the books, did I enjoy reading her? Did I enjoy her chapters? On the whole, I did like seeing her being held hostage in King's Landing and the psychology of that. Sometimes for me, it was a little bit boring and quite frustrating watching her some of her decisions. Again, I think that's probably good writing on George's part. But I know when I do a reread, I see a Sansa chapter, I'm like, oh, okay, let's just get this done. Until that is, we get to her marriage to Tyrion and Joffrey's death. I think after Joffrey's death and going to the Vale where she becomes Elaine Stone, is such an interesting situation up there. Who's she going to marry? Is she going to marry? What's going on with Littlefinger? What's he planning? And what makes it even more interesting going forward is the show did a completely different route with this, where she took Jane Paul's role. So if we assume that Sansa does eventually get to Winterfell, it's going to be really interesting to see how that happens. But in terms of the books, for me, I'm going to have to put her as C until she starts to step up more and until I see more of her, see her develop more. Davos. I'm going to put Davos at I don't know. Trouble with Davos is he's pretty much the only point of view when it comes to Stannis. So much of the Stannis story comes from him, but I really like his backstory of being the smuggler and Stannis cutting his fingers off. Kind of how he's this lonely peasant born in Fleabottom who rises to become Hand of a King. I think there's so much potential going forward as well, especially with his mission to White Harbour, the fake out of his death, the idea he's looking for Rickon, whether he goes to Skagos or not. There's another case where the show's so different, it's really going to be interesting to see where it goes. But for me, it's going to be B. Jon Con. I absolutely love Jon Connington. Although he's coming very late, I think the story around him is so interesting. Most of our POV characters, apart from Barristan really, and the Martells, fought on the losing side of Robert's rebellion. But the difference is you've got someone who was so close to Rhaegar. You get so much more information about him, Rhaegar as a person. And I think Jon Con's got so much going for him with like the idea of his mental health and him being in exile all these years and all his hope being in this young boy who may or may not be Aegon, his best friend's son. I just find him a very compelling character. He's one of the characters I'm really looking forward to reading when it comes to Winds of Winter, and I was really disappointed when the fake Aegon story was cut from the show. And I just really hope it means it's not irrelevant, because for me, it such an interesting dynamic going on. You've got Dany coming over eventually. You've got Aegon already there. You've got Cersei. You've got the Boltons. You've got what's just happened to Jon. It's such an interesting state it's been left in, and I can't wait to find out. And he's one of the key on wanting to see what happens to Winds of Winter. Sam. Again, another very hit and miss character for me. I didn't necessarily enjoy his early chapters on the way back from Beyond the Wall, but I did enjoy his chapters where he manipulated the Night's Watch vote to get Jon elected, and that really showed his political prowess. I think it was a really sensible decision for Jon to send him to Oldtown to become a maester, and the whole situation with the maesters is so interesting as well. There's so many mysteries going on there. I'm probably going to put him in, I'd say a high D and low C, but probably go for a C. We got quite a lot of C's, but like I said, there's not really any bad characters or characters I don't like. There was just some I enjoy more than others, and some I'm kind of indifferent about. Jaime for me has got, I know it's an obvious one, but it's got to be an A. He's such an interesting character, seeing the conflict within him, trying to come to terms with who he is as a person. And for a man who claims he has no honour, he cares a lot about his honour and what people think of him. Seeing him develop over the story and seeing who he's become, and then him losing his hand is such a massive event, and seeing him come to terms with that and seeing him become a better man, I think he's one of my favourite characters. Seeing his logic when it comes to killing Ares, because he was just given the impression early on that he just murdered his king because his father had arrived. When you see he did do it to save all those people, I hope his ending goes down very differently than it did on the show. Arianne, for me, is probably, out of all the new characters introduced in like A Feast for Crows Dance with Dragons, my favourite. I absolutely love her role in the Dornish plot. I love the whole Dornish master plan, what's going on there. I love her as a character, I love her. And what's got me so interested in the whole Dornish thing is the sample chapters from the Winds of Winter. If you haven't read them, I definitely recommend you go and do that. What we've seen of her so far, her plot to crown Marcella as queen, and she felt like she had to fight for her right to be Doran's heir, and manipulation at Ares. I think she's such a complex character, and someone I'm really looking forward to. It's one of these things that I'm going to put her in S tier, but I absolutely am sure that people are going to disagree with that, but your own personal thing. So if you disagree with me, make your own one and send it to me. I'll be really interested to see what other people think. Dany. Now, if it's not obvious from my channel, I absolutely love Targaryens. I love the history. There's so many interesting Targaryens, so many good Targaryens, so many bad Targaryens. You've got good rulers like Jaehaerys, you've got bad ones like Aenys, you've got the Dance of Dragons, you've got the Blackfire Rebellions, you've got the Blackfires as a whole, you've got the whole fake Aegon thing. And what I like about Daenerys is her take on all of it. That she sees herself as the last hope for this great dynasty. It's really interesting seeing her turn from this little girl to this powerful dragon riding queen. And what I like is that it's that ambiguity there. Is she a good person or not? Is what she's doing right or not? I'm very much of the opinion I think she is a good person. However, just because you're a good person doesn't mean you can't be a tyrant. But I know Dany's one of those ones that really does split people sometimes, because there's some people out there who just can't stand her chapters. And I can kind of see the justification a little bit when it comes to Dance of Dragons, because I do get the feeling, because he scrapped the 5-year time jump, a lot of her Dance of Dragons stuff was really stalling to put off her coming to Westeros, so he could fill in the gaps that would have been the 5-year time jump. So I can understand why people said that, but for me on the whole, it's like, especially Clash of Kings, Storm of Swords, I think she's absolutely fantastic. Jon is one a lot of me wants to put him in S, because at the end of the day, he is the Song of Ice and Fire. He's probably, next to Bran, one of the more closely connected characters to the White Walkers. I think, in a way, as a character, in the first book, maybe even the second book, I do understand why people find him a bit boring and a bit just, even though he's our only perspective at the wall for a long time. But for me, Jon really comes into his own at the end of the Clash of Kings, where he gets captured by the wildlings, and the whole journey with Mance and Ygritte and Tormund, and probably one of my favourite bits in A Storm of Swords that isn't the Red Wedding, is the battle for the wall. This kind of like hectic last stand to try and defend the realm, and the aftermath of that. For me, there's the moment where Jon's given command of the wall is a quite powerful moment. Ever since then, once he basically became the leader of Night's Watch, I think it's such an interesting character, especially when it's very clear he's not necessarily going to play by Night's Watch rules. He is going to do things that are controversial, like letting the wildlings through the wall, and it's all these things that ultimately lead to him getting stabbed by his brothers. And even though, because of the show, we now know what happens, I've got a feeling it's going to go down very differently in the book. For a starter, Melisandre's way too far away to resurrect him. So I've got a feeling that maybe someone like Val might be involved somehow. I'm one of these believers of the whole idea that it's possible his consciousness walked into Ghost, especially when you link that to Melisandre's vision. And that's kind of linked to him coming back as well. So it's one of these things where, even though we know what happens because of the show, it's going to be different in the book, I think, and it can be interesting to see. And I think in the book, there's going to be more consequences for his death. His personality is going to change a bit like Beric. When Beric died, part of him didn't come back. And it'd be interesting to see if that's the case with Jon, whether he's changed. So, as much as I want to put him in S, I am going to put him in A, because I do agree that his chapters in the first couple of books, I can understand why people can see him as a boring character. But I think for Storm of Swords and Dance of Dragons, and the cliffhanger of the Dance of Dragons, I've got to put him up there in A. And he's one of the characters I'm most looking forward to reading going forward. Ned. Well, he's only in one book, and we all know what happens to Ned. But for me, even though I probably shouldn't do this, I'm going to put him in S. Because I think when you first read a Game of Thrones or you watch the show, it's very much Ned's journey and Ned's story, his discovery of the whole situation with Cersei and Jaime and Joffrey not being Roberts. And even though he's getting manipulated by Littlefinger and Varys and everyone, and looking back, it's so obvious. Reading him figuring out about Joffrey, I was absolutely blown away by it. Like, oh my god, what have I just read? What have I just watched? Of course, his death was absolute shock. I never saw that coming. I saw the first season and then I read the books. So when it got to Ned's death, could not believe he was the main character. How could he die? But for me, the reason I'm putting him on S is because, for me as a fan, got me hooked is Jon's parentage. That is where I went from just being someone who watched the show and read the books to someone who was on the subreddits every day, on the forums every day, discussing it, talking about it, learning about all these theories and stuff. And for me, R plus L equals J is the catalyst of how I became such a fan. And for that silly sentimental reason is why I've got to put Ned in S, because so much of the evidence from that first book comes from him, the dreams. So I think that's my list. Yeah, I think I'm quite happy with it. I mean, the trouble is, especially from like C to B, there's some which are like a high C plus that could easily break into B. There's some Bs which could easily be Cs, and same with like Ds and Es, they could easily be interchangeable. It's just a rough idea. I do feel bad for Arrow. For me, I just don't. I need to put someone in F. I don't know, I think there's definitely some hot takes in there. I think Arya, Sansa are probably pretty hot takes that I think people are going to disagree with. I've got a feeling people aren't going to like the fact I put Dany so high. And I don't know if people can understand why I put Arianne so high. But on the whole, for me personally, I'm quite happy with that. So I'll be interested to see what other people think about this. If anyone's got any comments, just leave them below. I'll be interested to read your takes on it and what you would do differently, what you would change. Thanks for watching. Yeah, these videos, I'm not sure how many of these unscripted listy videos I'm going to do, because my main focus is the history and lore and the missing characters videos and character profiles. But every now and then I might try and do something like this. It was quite fun, and it was a change of pace for me, not having to sit and write a script for 3 or 4 days, record it for hours, and then spend another 3 or 4 days editing. So I don't know, we'll see how it goes. If people like this video, I might do more. I'll be interested in doing one about show characters, maybe some side characters,